Hey church family, this is Pastor SooSang again. In the other video, we already covered the first part of this presentation that I originally gave at the December congregational meeting, where we discussed and looked at the similarities and differences between the two denominations, the Presbyterian Church in America and the Christian Reformed Church, the CRC. And so now let's go to the second part, where we're going to look at pros and cons. Okay, here we go. So we covered this material. So here we go to the pros and cons. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to talk about the portions on that I think are the pros on the Presbyterian Church in America, the PCA, and then they correspond to the cons. So each one is a kind of category where I think the PCA has an advantage and it's a disadvantage to be in the CRC. And then what we'll do is we will then look at it the other way around. So we'll look at it the other way around this way, where the CRC has pros and the PCA has a corresponding con. Okay? So first, let's look at it right here, where let's talk about how are they doing theologically. And in this case, the PCA has a clear advantage. The PCA is more theologically and biblically sound. And it's not that the CRC has really kind of gone off the cliff yet and have moved into like strong theological heterodoxy, but there are warning signs that I have personally seen as I've gone to CRC classes, and things that I have read that are coming out of Calvin College and Calvin Theological Seminary that really does give me pause and concern. And so I don't know if I don't think it's fair to say that the CRC is a liberal denomination theologically, that is. We're not talking about politics here, but I do see signs that they are moving in that direction, and that is worrisome, especially for where the denomination may be in the next 5 to 10 years or so. Another place I would like to mention is if you go back to this here, where we're talking about the sheer number of people that are in the denomination, I think well, if you look at the history, the CRC it used to be a significantly larger denomination, and they have been in decline, whereas the PCA has steadily been growing over the years. And I think that is actually very much a direct result of their theological soundness. So as the more the PCA is strong in staying close to the Bible and strong on the gospel, especially in this generation where our culture is increasingly turning against the Bible and is becoming more anti-Christian, there are definite leaders on the PCA side who see that this is the movement and know that there has to be a really strong front over and against these kind of movements in the culture. And I don't see this nearly as much over there on the CRC side, and that's a significant difference. Now let's go to the second portion over here, which is what about future pastors and chandosanim? That's what we call our pastoral interns. And on the PCA side, it is better to recruit and raise up new pastors and pastoral interns. And on the CRC side, and it does go somewhat to this theological liberalism, but it also goes back to this issue right here, because it is difficult to get through the ordination process unless you go to Calvin Theological Seminary. That's a very significant obstacle to get into ordination in the CRC. So it's tough for them to be raised up. It's easier. Their pathways are more flexible and sensible over here on the PCA side, but it's also difficult when we're talking about their future. So, like we love Frank as our youth pastor, but, he has a dream of possibly going overseas as a missionary. And who are the people that can help raise him up there? We think the PCA is probably a better place. Or like Joe, our children's pastor, we love him too, but, he may, the Lord may lead him into different kinds of arenas in the future. And then, so the denomination is a series of partners. And so, but what that really practically means is who can take our young pastors and chondosanims into new opportunities in the future? Is the PCA better equipped to do that, or the CRC? And when you have so many more churches like here or down here, especially in the cities, they're far better equipped, and so many partners are better equipped to help raise up young men into ministry in the future and for the long-term health of our mission in the PCA versus the CRC. That's very important. Let's go to the third one. The denomination, if you heard my video about what makes denominations important, is it helps provide partners to advance the gospel mission. And I believe that the partners in the PCA are far stronger and better equipped to handle where our culture is going, especially as we become increasingly post-Christian and multi-ethnic. So, multi-ethnic, think about, the racial and ethnic makeup, and who is trying to think about how do you tackle this, and in what context are they in? Are they in urban context or are they in rural context? Who's going to be better equipped to be able to deal with the fast-changing ways that our culture is shifting? It's going to be people who are in urban contexts, who have more minorities, and who are more theologically stronger, and you can already see that. There's already a conference that I have taken our pastors to, so specifically for second generation Asian, Korean American pastors, and that's a conference that the PCA has been running for. It's a terrific conference. It's one of the best that we've seen, and we don't see anything even comparable over there going on in the CRC. So that's just one example. There are other kinds of ministries that equip churches and leaders to start to think about how to reach our culture, and then others, and we can see those are rising better on the PCA side than on the CRC side, okay? So let's go to number 4 over here. Where are they growing? So this goes back to their numbers here. And where are they growing? They're growing in the cities. The PCA explicitly is planning churches in the cities. The CRC is trying to do that too, but simply because they're mostly in small towns in the Midwest, they're just not as good at reaching cities. Maybe it's who knows what the Lord will do in the future, but that's where we are right now between those two. And this 5th one requires a little bit of explanation, that somehow, what does it mean when I say that the Presbyterian is more of a recognized, quote unquote, brand, versus nobody knows what the CRC is? And to explain that, Presbyterianism, is well known throughout American history, and they're known to have certain kinds of churches, specifically churches where the pastors are really strongly trained and have rigorous theology, and they tend to have a pretty educated pastoral leaders, and they've been vetted. And the other thing they're known for is this idea of elder leadership, right here, elder leadership, and it's called Presbyterian leadership, and because they have this elder leadership and systems of accountability, that's something that people kind of generally know. That not everybody knows exactly all, but that's a kind of like connotation and understanding that people have with the so-called Presbyterian name. Now here's a part that's tricky. The CRC as a denomination also has well-educated pastors, rigorous in their theology, and are reformed, and has a number of churches that are good and Christ-centered, gospel-driven kind of ministries. But the thing is, in the American populace, people just don't know about that as much. In fact, in my many years of being in our church, when I tell people that, I serve San Jose New Hope, and then they ask what kind of church that is, I'd say it's a Christian Reformed church, they often go, what is that? Or if I ask, have you ever heard of the CRC or the Christian Reformed? And almost always they say no. But people generally have some idea what Presbyterian is, even though sometimes quite frankly have a negative connotation of it, because in the last 20 or 30 years, the largest Presbyterian denomination has been the Theological liberal one, which has been kind of causing a lot of confusion among people. But there are very famous people like Tim Keller and others who are kind of bringing back the more old school reputation that Presbyterians have had in American history, and that's very helpful. That when certain people are looking for a certain kind of church that's strong in their grace drivenness, strong on the gospel and their theology, many will say, let's go look for this type of church, and they may start looking for a Presbyterian church. So I think that's no small advantage there, this last one. So let's now shift over to what I believe are the advantages on the CRC over disadvantages on the PCA side. So here, I think by far the biggest advantage of choosing the CRC for us would be that it will enable better and easier continuity with our mother church, New Hope. Right? It can make, or if we choose the PCA, it can make understanding the partnership with New Hope harder to understand for a number of people on the KM side. They seem to just, I don't know what percentage of the of people in New Hope, deeply care about this denominational issue. From what I can tell, most of them seem to care more that you preach the gospel and are strong in terms of grace and humility. But there may be some who really do care about this denomination issue, and some of them may have much more concern and reservations about this. And so, yes, it would pose a disadvantage in terms of trying to work more and more with our mother church. So that's, I think, the biggest pro for the CRC versus the PCA side. And then the other one, I really thought hard. I really wanted to be, as fair as I possibly can be. The other distinctive advantage that I can think of that is on the CRC side is that they run systems in a much more centralized way. And so they actually can pull money into their central leaders. And then if there's certain kinds of needs in the denomination, they can use mechanisms and leadership in the denomination to send money toward newer endeavors and needs in the denomination. And the PCA does not tend to do that nearly so much. In fact, the PCA is much more kind of like skeptical about operating that way. And so if you want to raise certain kind of money, do something kind of new, you tend to have to do it more informally and relationally, and there aren't any kinds of clear mechanisms inside the denomination do it as there is in the CRC. So that is, I think, for sure an advantage, a pro on the CRC side and a con on the PCA side. So let's just quickly review. Theologically, we're talking about here the future of our young pastoral interns, the Chandusanim, and new pastors and where they go, and raising them to be ordained in the first place. Whom can we work with for wider missional impact, church planning, being training, and then doing works in the city, where they're stronger in the cities and numbers, and that the name of Presbyterianism is easier to recognize in terms of the kinds of ministry that we believe in, gospel-centered and strongly biblical and missional. But on this side, the advantages on the CRC side with continuity to our mother church, New Hope, and then mechanisms for greater kinds of new innovative aids through money and help that way from the denomination. So those are the advantages on the CRC side. So I hope that's been helpful. Of course, obviously this is not exhaustive. There are other issues and there are other differences and so forth. But I thought these were the most helpful and relevant to highlight. Again, this is a really important week. I really hope you're prayerfully thinking about this and chewing on this. And if you have any questions, I absolutely will make myself available to try to answer your questions this week. And of course, also Steering and Pastor Young. So please don't hesitate to ask. And absolutely, please vote. Please come out to the congregational meeting so we can walk with this together and go toward launching our church and for the glory of Jesus. Thanks.